Okay, let's do another one. I want to try and get through this as much as possible. Hang on, let me see how much I got far on it. Oh, come on. Barely halfway over. Good lord. How much more is in this? We just got to that part and there wasn't much more before the end of the season. Gated Paradise. The Grey Priest didn't take me to a medical room for poor commoners. It was a well-furnished room that, judging by what I knew from the gate's waiting rooms, was probably for merchants with connections to nobles and wealthy visitors. The reason probably lied within my clothes. You can roughly tell how wealthy someone's family was by their clothes, by how much cloth was used, was it embroidered, how did it look, and so on. My normal clothes were a different story, but my baptism outfit was extremely frilly, and while it lacked embroidery, it had small flowers sewed onto it and looked pretty fancy. My hairpin was clearly special and handmade too, so at a glance I probably looked like a girl about as wealthy as Frida. But, well, I didn't need to go out of my way and point out that I was a poor person. It was the priest who made the mistake, and to be honest, I had no idea how they would treat me if I would corrected them. What was the harm in keeping quiet? Please excuse me. As I furrowed my brow and thought, the Grey Priest sat me onto a bench. I held my swaying body steady by gripping the armrest, and immediately the priest took out my hairpin and delicately removed my shoes. What? He did it so smoothly I didn't even know how to react. It was like when Chet fussed over me at Frida's house. The Grey Priest was clearly used to taking care of other people. I opened my eyes wide in surprise, forgetting to thank him. Before I knew it, he had stood up, made the nearby bed, and the priest was carrying me onto it. I'm really okay. It's not good to lie before the gods. This is a temple. But I'm not lying. Once on the bed, he gently put the covers over me. He then placed my hairpin on a table next to the bed and my shoes in front of it. He felt more like a trained servant than a priest. It honestly felt really weird. Please rest here. I will come check on you later. The priest left the room and shut the door behind him. It was true that I still felt weak, so I just stayed in bed and waited for my energy to return. I could use the time to think of an excuse for why this had happened. My family would definitely probe me for answers, but I couldn't tell them I just laughed too hard. That would make Lutz mad, too. But thinking about Lutz made me remember him doing the Glickman pose, which made me laugh again. I waited in bed and my strength slowly returned. I clenched my fists to get open and close to test my grip strength. Unfortunately, I had to use the bathroom. There was a chamber pot right by the bed, but I didn't see any water nearby, so I didn't know how I would clean up afterwards. I can imagine that the people who usually stayed here had servants and didn't clean up after themselves, but that wasn't the case for me. Plus, I didn't want a priest I had never met before to do it for me. Ideally, I could ask someone where the water was and stealthily clean up myself. I sat up and tried shaking my legs. They felt strong enough to not give in immediately. I did my hair and put my hairpin back up. Frida had a bell beside her bed to call servants, but this room had no such thing. This was an emergency. I had to go look for someone. I didn't know how long it would take to find someone, so I had to act fast before I couldn't hold it any longer. I slid off the bed, put my shoes on, and escaped the room. The pillars and walls had decorative reliefs, but in general the hallways were pure white and stretched on infinitely. My footsteps echoed and intensified enough to be quite loud, but I couldn't hear anyone else walking. It seemed like the best thing to do would be to walk back to where the ceremony was being held. Wait, what? Did I turn the wrong corner? The temple was generally pure white, but I was starting to see bits of color here and there. It became clear that the statues and reliefs getting more fancy wasn't just my imagination. I had seemingly wandered my way into an area for nobles. The blood drained from my face. I could only imagine that bad things happening if a noble found me here. Oh no, I have to hurry back. I spun around and started nervously speed-walking back to where I came from, legs trembling. I wanted to get out of the noble zone as soon as possible. I made sure to look at distinctive parts of the hall to keep track of where I was. I saw that carving before, right? I think I remember this tapestry. As I turned corners looking for the medical room I had been in, I heard a steady set of footsteps walking this way. If I had left the noble zone, I would have welcomed that with open arms, but I didn't want to be found right now. I wanted to hide. I would be fine if it was a priest, but what if it was a noble? I looked around in a panic, but there was nowhere to hide in the hallway. I was found and caught in seconds. Who are you? What are you doing here? A firm voice rang out, originating from a female priest with tightly bound hair. She had the sharp look of someone who knew how to do her job, but at the same time she felt kind of like a sexy secretary. She wore a gray robe like the priest who had carried me here, but it had a different design. I couldn't tell if the designs distinguished men and women, or if those participating in the ceremony wore different robes. Speaking of which, it hit me that there weren't any female priests at the baptism. I let out a sigh of relief that she wasn't a noble, and immediately apologized for trespassing in the noble zone. I'm sorry, my name is Mina, and I was taken to a medical room after collapsing. I had no servants with me, and there were no bells, so I left to look for someone. I got lost, and before I knew it, I was here. The woman looked me over head to toe, then sighed. She put a hand on her cheek, and as she sighed wearily, I found myself unable to look away from her. I'll take you to the chapel where the ceremony is taking place, once I've finished my business. Can you follow me for a moment? Yes, thank you. The priest's eyes narrowed slightly, and she continued walking, her footsteps echoing as she went. I jogged to keep up with her, but if I kept that up, I would collapse in no time. It was a stroke of luck that she had business just a single room away. Please wait here for a moment. I'll be finished soon. Okay. I nodded, breathing heavily. The female priest glanced at me with brows furrowed in worry, then pushed the door open. I put a hand on the wall to catch my breath and looked into the room the priest had just entered since the door was still open. Once I saw what was inside, I gasped hard and froze in place. Is this a library? It wasn't too big of a room, but the walls were covered in bookshelves. Most of the shelves were packed with wooden boards and loose pieces of paper. There were some closed shelves with locked doors that probably contained the more precious books. There were 2 long desks in the middle of the room with slanted tops to make reading easier. The desks resembled those I had seen in college lecture halls, and the benches were long enough for about 5 people to sit next to each other. And finally, the tops of the desks had 6 thick books placed next to each other on them, connected by sturdy chains. It's a chained library! It had been my dream back in my Irano days to go to a foreign library with a long history. This was a fantasy world and not a foreign country, but still, it would be fair to say that my wish had finally been granted. In the past, I had wanted so badly to go to a foreign chained library and touch the history protected by linked metal. I put my hand on my chest and trembled. My heart was pounding so fast I could feel the blood rushing through my whole body. Something I had wanted for my whole life was now miraculously in front of me. You're not going to be able to go in there. Warm tears spilled out of my eyes one after another. I've never seen one of these before. Not only was it my first time seeing a chained library, it was my first time as mine seeing a collection of books large enough to be called a library. Again, it was only a single room, and it wasn't that large, but it was basically a cavern of hidden treasures for me, given how long I had lived without seeing any books. This is the true paradise created by the gods. The gods I worship are here. Praise be to the gods. Glory be to the gods. When in Rome, do as Romans do. Overjoyed as I was to see a library, and a chained library at that, I made the stupid pose and then kowtowed on the ground to express my gratitude. I think it's what it is. I was kind of shaky on one leg, but I wanted to believe that my overwhelming gratitude was being conveyed. I rubbed my face and hands with my clothes to make sure I wasn't dirty. Once I had confirmed my hands were clean, I took a determined step forward to follow the woman into paradise. Excuse me. Pfft. My face slammed into something as if I had charged right into an automatic door that didn't open. I hit it so hard that I was actually seeing stars in my eyes. Ow. I crashed to the ground and held my face while using my other hand to search for an entrance. My hand couldn't move past a certain point in that library. Or in the doorway. There was some invisible wall blocking the way. I tapped it with my palm, but the invisible wall blocked me and stopped me from going inside. What? Why? The woman from before went inside without issue. I couldn't understand why only I was being detained or being denied entry. I felt the world darkening around me, and I hit the invisible wall as hard as I could. It didn't budge an inch. There was paradise right in front of me, but I couldn't go inside. There were books inside, but I couldn't read or touch a single one of them. Did the gods approve of torturing this cruel and torture this cruel and unreasonable? I've been denied books so long, and now this. Stupid gods, give me back my gratitude. Come on, let me in. I want inside too. Books were so rare and expensive that only nobles owned them. Said nobles also had magic tools they used just to keep kids quiet during the baptism ceremony. It wasn't strange they'd use some magic to keep their precious books safe. I understood that, but it was just too cruel. The despair of seeing a library I couldn't enter was so much that tears dripped from my face. I couldn't even work up the energy to wipe them away. I want to read. The female priest from earlier returned, holding a bundle of what looked like work documents. She looked at me, clinging to the invisible wall, crying, and took a sharp step backward. May I ask what you're doing? Why? Why can't I go inside? I asked while pounding the invisible wall. The priest looked back at the library and realized what had happened. These books are precious, so only those given special permission within the temple may enter this room. She said, shining a light of hope down on me. If only those affiliated with the temple could enter the room, I just had to join the temple myself. Oh no, here we go, guys. The gods had not abandoned me yet. I would use the last months available to me to read those books cover to cover. I wiped my tears and snot away, then shot my hand up. Question, please. How can I join the temple? I suppose the simplest way will be to become an apprentice shrine maiden. It seemed that women were called shrine maidens, not priests. I had been making a mistake by calling this woman a female priest. Okay then, I want to be an apprentice shrine maiden here. How can I become one? You need merely to get the permission of the high priest or the high bishop. Now, shall we go to the chapel? The shrine maiden tried to cut the conversation short there, but I shook my head. Where's the high bishop? The baptism ceremony has ended by now, so he should be in his room. Would you like to go there now? I could tell that this woman was getting completely weirded out, but she was a precious source of information, and I didn't want to miss this opportunity. Yes, I can't go home like this. I will consult the High Bishop. I didn't know if she had been impressed by my unshakable resolve, or if she was dealing with me based on the wealthy appearance of my clothing, but the Shrine Maiden let out a defeated sigh and took me to the High Bishop's room. I had apparently gotten lost pretty deep inside the temple, judging by how close his room was. I stood waiting outside the extravagant doors while waiting for my entrance to be permitted. I looked around and saw expensive art and furnishings all around me, confirming that, indeed, the top dog of the temple was fairly wealthy. High Bishop, there is a girl who wishes to become an apprentice Shrine Maiden. Willingly? I could hear some of their conversation through the slightly ajar door. I got a little nervous, like someone waiting for an interview, and I checked to make sure I looked okay. Part of my outfit was a bit stiff with dried snot and tears. I wanted to stride in confidently, but the door was heavier than expected. Having no other choice, I pushed the door with all my body weight and slid inside once there was a big enough crack. Excuse me? The High Bishop's room resembled Frida's room. There was a table with chairs around it fairly close to the door for meeting purposes. The corner of the room farthest from the door had a bed with thick drapes, and on the other side was a workspace. The workspace had a large desk and 2 bookshelves. There was also a decorative shelf where a 30-centimeter tall statue of a god rested, along with the Bible I had seen during the ceremony. There was also a candle there placed symmetrically so that the Bible was exactly in between it and the statue. That was odd. The Shrine Maiden and High Bishop were in the workspace, so I walked in that direction with as much dignity as I could muster. I could tell the High Bishop was staring right at me, so much it hurt. I took deep breaths and steeled myself. I was about to hire a job interview. This interview would decide whether or not I could enter the bookroom. What is your name? Mine. Please, High Bishop, I want to be an apprentice Shrine Maiden. I beg for your permission to become one. I clasped my hands in front of my chest as I begged. The High Bishop gave an amused smile and put his pen down. In that case, mine, could you tell me why you wish to become an apprentice Shrine Maiden? Because there's a room with books here, I answered, which must have been an unexpected answer given by how his eyes widened. The bookroom? You can read? Yes, though there is still a lot of words I don't know. My vocabulary will grow as I read more books. I would like to spend the rest of my life reading the books here. The High Bishop sighed and rubbed his temples. He slumped his shoulders to an exaggerated extent and shook his head. You seem to be mistaking something. This temple is a place of worship. Priests and Shrine Maidens serve the gods. That's right, I understand. That thick Bible you read for him today is filled with stories about the gods, right? Well, that Bible is basically a god to me. I want to read about the gods until I die. I want to know all about the gods. You are a biblical fundamentalist? The High Bishop's eyes flashed. I wasn't sure if I should say yes or no to that. After a bit of thought, I decided that the average kid my age wouldn't know what that meant. At times like this, it was best to keep things simple and not say anything unnecessary. I haven't heard that phrase, and I'm not entirely sure what it means, but I would like to read the Bible, and there's no doubt in my mind that I want to learn more about the gods. Believe in my passion as one who receives the God of Fire's divine protection. I want to become an apprentice Shrine Maiden and spend the rest of my life reading the books here to learn everything about the gods. Do my prayers and wishes reach your heart, High Bishop? The High Bishop, a little thrown off by my desperate and repeated pleas, looked over me and nodded to himself. I feel your passion. If you so wish, you can indeed become a Shrine Maiden apprentice. However, a child from a family such as yours will need to match their passion with a donation of equal dedication. Do you know how much you will need to donate? He was probably trying to rip me off, since I was wearing expensive clothing. If you want to get in the temple, hand over some cash. But I already knew that the church wouldn't be a pretty organization that ran off dreams and rainbows. If I could get in by paying money, I just had to give some of what I had on hand. Speaking of which, I had heard that a single book would cost several small golds. If granted access to the chained library, I would be able to read at least 10 books as thick as that Bible. My only source of context was Japanese rental libraries, but generally you could access all books in the library for the price of one book. Considering that I would be able to read all the stuff packed in that bookroom for half a year, and considering that I would still have plenty to leave with my family, I could donate a large gold without feeling too bad about it. I'm not sure what a normal donation would be, but I can donate one large gold of my own money. A large gold? Shouted the High Bishop as so loud spit came flying out of his mouth. The Shrine Maiden looked stunned as well and put a hand over her mouth, eyes wide. Judging by their reaction, I realized I had offered far more money than what was normal. Oh, is that too much? Well, that's just my maximum offer. I can pay less. I can pay less, too. The High Bishop looked at the Shrine Maiden, coughed to collect himself, and looked at me with much more serious eyes. Well, we of the temple consider your passionate desire to become an apprentice Shrine Maiden quite splendid. However, as today was the baptism ceremony, haven't you already decided on a job? Do you belong to any organization? It was true that if I had already settled on a job, I wouldn't be able to suddenly drop in and become an apprentice shrine maiden out of nowhere. But I planned to work at home and thus had no obligations anywhere. I am registered with the Merchant's Guild, but I'm not working anywhere. I'm sickly and I was planning to work at home. At home? Are you a merchant's daughter? You cannot belong to any organization if you are to become an apprentice shrine maiden. You can leave the Merchant's Guild and become an apprentice shrine maiden, but do you have your parents' permission to do that? I just saw the Bookworm today, so I haven't discussed this with my parents yet. I faltered there. I couldn't answer about the Merchant's Guild either. I needed to be registered there to sell things. I'm not sure if I can leave the guild. What would happen to all the money I've saved and all the products I plan to make? I murmured to myself to collect my thoughts, and the High Bishop overheard. His eyes widened. The money you've saved? More products? Are you not helping your parents with their work? No, not exactly. This was my chance to market myself to the temple. Thinking back to what I read about interviews in the past, I summarized everything I had done and what I had earned from it. All in all, it took about a minute. It might be wise for me to negotiate with the guildmaster to allow you to remain registered, even after becoming an apprentice here. My efforts were successful. Judging by the High Bishop's impressed smile, it would be big help for me if somebody with authority negotiated on my behalf. I said my thanks and left, dealing with the guildmaster to the High Bishop. I'll ask my parents if I can become an apprentice shrine maiden. Certainly, if they refuse or you have any worries, don't hesitate to come to me at once. You can come here to read books as you desire. Entering the bookroom still is out of the question, but I will allow you to read my Bible here. Really? Yay! Praise be to the gods. I made the stupid pose. And instantly I could feel body tilt. The blood drained from my face. It seemed that I had passed my limit without realizing it. My energy slipped right out of my body. In its place, I could feel the heat Oh no, not this again. Oh no, I got too excited. With that blitz around, there was nobody to stop me and hold me back when I got too excited. I've really done it now. Plop. I fell to the side and stopped moving. It sucked that I couldn't move, but at least I was still conscious. I shifted my focus to keeping the still slight amount of devouring heat within me bottled up. What? Are you all right? The High Bishop watched me collapse with a shocked expression and shot out of his chair, knocking it back. The shrine maiden calmly looked at me on the ground and murmured quietly to herself. Speaking of which, I believe she mentioned collapsing during the ceremony. She what? Replied the High Bishop, eyebrows shooting up. I apologize to them, still unable to move. I'm sorry, I got too excited. Please wait a moment, I can't move right now. Okay, I think that's probably going to be... Actually, no, I can still continue. For some reason, I was thinking I was a bit further ahead on time. Rejection and persuasion. Oh boy. The High Bishop summoned a Grey Priest to carry me back to the medical room, and this time the Shrine Maiden stayed behind so that I wouldn't leave unsupervised. As a result, I was forced to use the bathroom with her watching and cleaning up after me. It was so embarrassing I almost cried. I felt so bad about it that I couldn't even look her in the eye. If I was strong enough to bury myself in the blankets and roll around, I would have, but I wasn't. I stretched out on top of the bed and stared at the ceiling, despairing over my incompetence until eventually Lutz came to see me. The sight of me being watched over in such a fancy room caught him off guard, and he rushed to the bed immediately. What did you do, mine? I went looking for water and collapsed. I lifted my head up and summarized what had happened. No! More happened. Lutz narrowed his eyes and shook his head, arms crossed. That can't be everything. Spit it all out. Yep. I found a book room and got really excited. What's a book room, exactly? A paradise given to us by the gods, or in other words, a room full of books. Ah, alright. That's enough. I can guess the rest. Let's put a hand on his forehead and wave me away with his other hand. That was the end of that, so I grabbed my hairpin so that we could leave. You didn't tell him the most important part. This young lady collapsed after forcing her way into a meeting with the High Bishop, added the Shrine Maiden with a shrug, having listened in on our conversation. Lutz paled, then pinched my cheeks, pulling them. How could you be so dumb? Sorry, I know I got a little too excited. It would have been better if I had proceeded more cautiously after thinking things through, but ultimately I had forged a path towards becoming a Shrine Maiden and been given the opportunity to read the Bible inside the High Bishop's room. I knew I messed up, but I didn't regret what I had done. We're going home before you do anything else. Lutz carried me out of the temple on his back with the Shrine Maiden's exit. Dad was waiting for us in front of the temple garden, looking frustrated. It seems someone came to get you. I will take my leave then. Thank you for your help. I moved over to Dad's back and we started going home. As I listened to Lutz report to Dad what happened today, the steady up and down shaking of being carried encouraged me to sleep. I'm going to sign my contract at the store before going home, said Lutz, snapping me back to reality. We're in front of the Gilberta Company, but naturally I wasn't in the state to drop by. Lutz and I split up so he could go inside to report what had happened and sign his apprentice contract. Before Dad and I left, though, Mark came outside to greet us. I waved to him while still on Dad's back. Thanks for today, Mr. Mark. I'm a bit too weak to go inside right now, but I'll be back. Take care of yourself. Don't mess up on the contract. Yeah, get some rest. I waved goodbye to Lutz and Mark, then went home with Dad. We finished lunch somewhat fancier than what we ate usually for celebratory reasons, and as we all drank tea together, I looked at Dad. I wanted to talk to him about how I wanted to become an apprentice shrine maiden. Dad? Yeah? Dad took a sip of tea in a good mood. I think I want to be an apprentice shrine maiden at the temple. The second I said that, Dad's smile vanished. Yep, here we go. He's going to explain about the whole blue priest thing. He then slammed his cup against the table so hard it shook. I flinched as the tea flew out of the cup and splashed onto the table. What was that? Say it again? Dad's voice was so low and tense that I blinked in surprise. His anger and disgust was so apparent my heart started beating faster. An apprentice shrine maiden at the temple? Don't joke around. I wouldn't send my daughter to the frickin' temple. Dad, why are you so mad? I can only blink in confusion at Dad's sudden change in attitude. I had expected him to pose this, but I really couldn't imagine why he was so furious with disgust. Only orphans become priests and shrine maidens. Orphans don't have parents or guardians, so they have to become them. They have no choice. You're different. Only orphans become shrine maidens. Yeah, and priests. You have parents and family. You're not becoming a shrine maiden. Don't bring this up again. I could only sit in shock, stunned at Dad's extreme response, but at the same time I could understand where he was coming from. I had noticed something was off back at the temple. The High Bishop had been surprised that someone would willingly want to become a shrine maiden, and the apparent wealth of my family had thrown him off. Gunter, you don't have to be so harsh. I just didn't know. Yeah, you're right. Dad took deep breaths to calm his frustration and ruffled my hair. Mom started wiping up the tea while looking at me curiously. Still, though. Why would you ever want to be a shrine maiden, mine? It was clear that both Mom and Dad were heavily biased against priests and shrine maidens. I had thought both were honorable and respected professions. So to be honest, I was really surprised. Well, when I collapsed in the temple, I got lost looking for water. You were in some waiting room, right? There should have been water right outside of it. Dad, having heard the same thing from Lutz, rubbed his chin. It was true that waiting rooms for commoners tended to have water near them, but I had to shake my head. My outfit was so fancy, they actually thought I was the daughter of a rich family and took me to the kind of room a merchant with a noble's letter of introduction would go. There wasn't any water nearby. Yeah, I can't help that with an outfit like yours. Dad nodded repeatedly. Mom and Thule both understood as well. While I was lost, I ended up in a part of the temple meant for nobles. Both of my parents paled. We lived in a stratified society where those of different statuses were kept thoroughly separate. If I had gotten lost and annoyed a noble, that would have meant the end of our lives right then and there. A shrine maiden found me first, so I never met a noble. But I did find a book room. It was filled with books. I wanted to read them so bad, but I couldn't go inside. Books, huh? Dad's eyebrow twitched. I asked how I could get inside, and they told me I needed to become an apprentice shrine maiden. And you decided to become one without thinking at all, huh? Sheesh, give up on those books. Just keep trying to make them like you have been. I couldn't believe that Dad was telling me to give up on the books I had been dedicating my whole life to obtain. I just stared at him. He was looking at me with a deadly serious expression, not a smile in sight. What do you want more? Cutting off your family and living life in an orphanage to read books? Or keeping on living with us like you have been? My head went white. Books or my family? Pick one. I wanted to live with my family as long as possible before my devouring killed me. I wanted to use some of that time to make and read books if possible. But I had found a room of books and got super excited at the opportunity to potentially read real books. I wanted to become a shrine maiden to enter that room, that was all. I didn't understand why I would have to cut off my family. Cut you off? Why? My voice was shaking and barely audible. Dad gave a heavy nod. Apprentice shrine maidens live in the temple. The work is hard and the orphans only get help from each other. You would never last there with your devouring. What job could you do when you're so bad at managing your health you collapse during a ceremony? Not to mention, books are expensive. They're so rare that they use magic tools or whatever to protect them from strangers in the temple. You think they would let you read them right away just because you're an apprentice? Everything Dad said was right. I had no room for arguing. I knew in my head that it would be impossible for me to become a shrine maiden apprentice, but I didn't want to give up after seeing all those books. I bit my lip to hold back my tears, and Thule held my hand. With tears brimming in my eyes, I squeezed her hand. Why do you want to be a shrine maiden that much? You promised to stay with us. Do you want to be one so much you break your promise with me? Said Thule, driving a stake through my heart. I weakly shook my head, feeling the strength draining from my body. No, I just want to read the books I saw. I don't want to be a shrine maiden or anything. I just want in that room. Becoming a shrine maiden apprentice was a means to an end, not the end itself. It wasn't important enough to me to hurt my family and cut myself off from them. My answer made Thule beam a smile, but I could still tell she was anxious. That's a relief, mine. You'll stay with me, right? You promised, right? Once I get better, I'll tell the High Bishop I changed my mind. Dad sighed in relief and gave me a tight hug. I'm glad you understand. You're my precious daughter. I'm not handing you over to the temple. On the one hand, I was glad that I wouldn't have to cut my family off, but the moment the door leading to a future in the bookroom shut firmly, I felt the devouring heat start boiling within me. Mine feels like you're getting a fever. She already collapsed several times today, remember? The stress of this conversation just caught up to her. Let her sleep. My parents took me to bed, and I gently closed my eyes while feeling the devouring heat spread through me. I never would have thought that I'd pick something else over books. My entire life up until now had been focused around books. All choices led to books. Back in my Irano days, I would have chosen books in an instant and cut myself off from my family. No matter the cost, books came first. And yet, I hadn't been able to pick books here. I had thought my family was only so important to me because I lacked books, but at some point, they had become just as important as books to me. But still, I had finally found books. I wanted to read them. I couldn't pick books over my family, but I couldn't abandon books either. The pressure of being pinched between two desires that it made it hard for me to bottle up the heat like I usually did. The devouring heat rapidly spread through my body as if mocking my weak mental state. I felt frustrated at things not working like they usually did and started thinking of a compromise between my family and books. Is there any way to read the books without becoming an apprentice shrine maiden? The High Bishop's attitude flipped around when I mentioned my donation, so maybe he'll give me permission to enter the book room if I saved up more money. I don't like the idea of using money to control people, but I have to do what I have to do. Or maybe I should just be satisfied with going to the High Bishop's room and just reading the Bible there. In the end, it took 2 full days for me to push the devouring heat back down. I could finally get out of my bed once my fever went down. My body still felt heavy. It would probably get better after another day of rest since I bottled up the devouring heat. Lutz came by to check up on me and scrunched up his face after seeing how I looked. You're still looking sick. Benno wants to talk to you, but it looks like that's not going to happen today. Do you have any plans for tomorrow, Lutz? I want to go to the temple and then go to Benno's store afterward, I asked, making Lutz tilt his head a bit. The temple? Sure, but why? I want to read the Bible there. While I'm there, I will tell them I don't want to be an apprentice shrine maiden anymore. Huh? Apprentice shrine maiden? Where's that coming from? Right. The shrine maiden had told Lutz that I had forced my way into a meeting with the High Bishop, but not about what I've been asking about. I told you I found a book room during the ceremony, right? Only people involved with the temple can enter it, so I wanted to join the temple. I was told becoming an apprentice shrine maiden would be the fastest way to do that, so I jumped at the opportunity. That's dumber than me wanting to be a traveling merchant, you know. Be a little more realistic. Aren't you the one who taught me not to charge ahead without thinking? To try and find a more realistic path forward instead? Lutz had transformed from a boy yearning for impossible dreams to a boy chasing after his dreams with a feet planted firmly in reality. His words stabbed into my chest. I was just thinking that would be the fastest way for me to get books. Yeah, you always stop thinking when books get involved. I'm thinking you should stop going to the temple at all. You're just gonna keep getting disappointed, and that's no good for you. Wouldn't that make your devouring heat go wild? I just managed to push back the devouring heat by thinking about how I at least get to read the Bible. Lutz looked at me with a conflicted expression, then smiled and patted my head. Worked out a compromise, huh? I didn't think you'd ever give in with books on the line. You did good. If going to the temple's all you need, that's fine with me. Not like you're healthy enough to work in the temple anyway. I know that. The next day, Lutz and I went to the temple. We wore our new apprentice clothes since we would be going to Benno's store. The area around the temple was fairly fancy too, so I figured they would be better than our normal clothes all around. I told the guard my name and that I wanted to see the High Bishop. He must have been informed about me ahead of time, as soon as a gray priest arrived to guide me to the temple. What about you, Lutz? You don't have anything to do if you come with me. Maybe you should go to Benno's to study? I'll go there once I'm done here. I'll come get you after 5th bell, so just wait here until then. Don't go wandering off on your own. Okay, the gray priest took me to the High Bishop's room, but he was absent. In his stead, the blue-robed High Priest greeted me. I like Ferdinand. He's cool. He's awesome. He looked to be about as old as Benno, and his face was like a carved statue, revealing no emotion whatsoever. He had light gold eyes and pale blue hair that extended to his shoulders. The High Bishop was a little overweight, but the High Bishop was a little overweight, but the High Priest was very tall and had a slender build. He looked exactly like the kind of skillful leader who could efficiently micromanage hundreds of priests if necessary. You're mine? The High Bishop told me about you. Come inside. Thank you. The High Bishop requested that I read the Bible to you until he returns. That's great, but why did he ask the High Priest to do that? Aren't there more important things for him to be doing? Why would he? Oh, right, the donation money. I was offering to donate so much money that they were probably treating me as a VIP guest. My suggested donation really seemed to have left an impact on them. I could use this to my advantage. Maybe a little negotiation really could open the way to the book room. Please have a seat. The High Priest began reading for me at the table, but since he was sitting across from me, I couldn't see the pages. It seemed they wouldn't be letting me touch the book itself. I thought for a moment, then hesitantly decided to push my luck. High Priest, I don't just want to hear the stories, I want to read the book too. Why is that? Are you not here to learn more about the gods? I am, but I also want to learn to read new words. I mean, fair enough. The High Priest blinked in surprise as if stunned by what I had said. Then, after some thought, he gave a deep nod. Very well, but know that this Bible is very precious. Will you swear not to touch it? I will. I promise not to touch it. You better be able to keep that promise, girl. The High Priest set me onto his lap and continued reading, positioned such that I could read the Bible, and he could stop me immediately if I tried to touch it. Beautifully written letters covered the pages of parchment, yellowed on the edges where people touched them. I inhaled deeply the scent of old paper and let out a sigh of admiration. Just as I had expected, the writing has been greatly simplified for the baptism festival. The entire atmosphere was different. I learned new words while the High Priest read aloud from the Bible. Nouns and verbs I had wanted to know how to read for so long rained down upon me in an endless torrent of entertainment. Eventually, I started pointing at words I vaguely recognized, making sure not to touch them, and reading them aloud while the amused High Priest taught me what they meant. You seem to be a fast learner. I would love to teach one who absorbed knowledge as you do. Are you not a noble? Is it possible that either of your family carries blood from a noble lineage? Definitely not. I see. That is a shame. I don't know why the High Priest was disappointed with that, but I got the feeling that he taught the priests and shrine maidens here just like Mark taught Benno's apprentices. He had a kind of teacher-like atmosphere and seemed to be used to teaching people similarly to Mark. Oh, you've arrived indeed. I appreciate you waiting. The High Bishop returned, so I went back to my seat and the High Priest delicately closed the Bible, locked the gemstone clasp, and placed it back on the bookshelf. I had a very fun time thanks to the High Priest reading the Bible to me. I am very thankful. The High Bishop sat comfortably where the High Priest had been sitting, who moved to stand next to him instead. In any case, what did your parents say? They got mad at me and said almost since only orphans became shrine maidens. Hope drained from the High Bishop's eyes and he slumped his shoulders. He sighed and shook his head. The High Priest standing beside him replied in his place, It's not true that only orphans can join the temple. There are children of nobles here. Many orphans do become priests and shrine maidens, but that is merely because few other workplaces will accept them. With their options limited, they have no choice but to become apprentice priests and shrine maidens, said the High Priest, making me blink in surprise. Why can't they work anywhere else? They have no one to introduce them, nor anyone to look after them. I understood completely. This city was founded on parents and family members introducing children to the workplaces, which wasn't good for orphans at all. It was difficult enough for normal kids to get jobs their parents didn't support, so it was hard to imagine how difficult it would be for orphans to find any job at all. You do not have to be an orphan to become a shrine maiden. That is all I want you to understand. That day, you're just regularly weak. The High Bishop furrowed his brows and stroked his beard. I nodded while thinking in the back of my head that he would look perfect in a Santa suit. Trust me. Anybody but him would be better at Santa than him. I'm sick with a disease called the devouring. The High Bishop, who had been listening to me calmly, suddenly shot out of his chair with his eyes wide open. The High Priest practically slammed his hands against the table and leaned towards me. The devouring, they both said in unison. Yes, what about it? I reflexively leaned back, overwhelmed by this sudden interest. You really shouldn't have mentioned that. They're going to want to get hands on you now, even more than ever. As I blinked in fear of having said something I shouldn't have. Yeah, you shouldn't have said that. The High Bishop pointed to the door with a trembling hand. High Priest, bring it here at once. I know. The High Priest gave a nod and strode quickly out of the room. His movements were graceful but incredibly fast. He left the door open behind him, probably due to being in such a hurry. I watched him go, stunned, and saw the High Bishop turn to face the shelf with the Bible. Praise be to the gods. Out of nowhere, he started praying to the gods with the... and I instinctively raised my arms to do half of the pose. Glory be to the gods. I watched the High Priest do the kowtowing in a daze, baffled and scared by what was happening. There was definitely not a good development. I wanted to run away, but judging by how serious they looked, I probably wouldn't be allowed out of here. I sat in the chair, frozen in place as I tried not to look at the High Bishop praying. I heard footsteps rapidly coming in the direction, and before I knew it, the High Priest was back, carrying something wrapped in cloth. He set it on the table and removed the cloth, revealing the Holy Grail, a statue in the chapel had been holding. Please touch this chalice. What? It's okay for me to touch it? Yes, hurry. I timidly reached out to the chalice on the table. Both of them were staring at me so hard it was scary. Ultimately, I just pushed my hand out. The second my fingers touched the chalice, it began shining with a brilliant light. What's going on? I hurriedly pulled my hand back and the light faded. I looked between my hand and the chalice while the High Bishop and High Priest nodded at each other. Mine? I would like to talk to your parents. Uh-oh. Yeah, Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. I think things just got really bad really fast. Yeah. You think? Oh, Banner's gonna lecture you. Banner's gonna lecture you. He's gonna get onto you about this. And so will your parents. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time.